Hello, everyone. This is Dr. Mahmoud. In this video, I will be talking about cost of quality. And an important thing about cost of quality is in order to do the cost of quality, we have to find some measures. And these in operations management, we call it KPI, Key Performance Index. And these are some of the factors, parameters that will give us some fact we collected through the process in order to make some decisions. So it is important to gain insight into the product or the process. It will allow us as managers to manage by facts and remove any guesswork, and could be there also other reasons for why we use the KPI, the key performance indicators. The cost of quality could be related to attaining and maintaining quality for your organization, or could be the cost of poor quality because you have to do some fixing and prevention from issues from happening. And the cost of quality can run between 10 to 30% of sales, or also could be 25% to 40% of operating expenses. Now let's take a look into this quote. We need to communicate to management the impact of quality in the language they understand, which is often in terms of dollars. So most of the time, management, they afraid of spending money on investment that is not worth it. So we use the cost of quality to justify that decision. So let's take a look into this chart here where you will see the total cost will decrease by increasing the prevention and appraisal cost. And we'll talk about the definition for each one of these. So the failure cost is right here, as you see, and the total cost also will decrease. The cost of prevention, you have to invest more in prevention and appraisal in order to maintain a good quality for your product. All right, now we're talking about these two things. A hidden cost. Well, they're not only just one thing or one cost. There's so many things that are hidden, such as missing payment, testing costs, bugs, canceled license, rework, inspection costs. These are just, we see it, but the things that we don't see, such as the employee turnover, lost customer, hidden rework, bad will, consulting time, loss of market share, etc. So there are some of the costs that we don't see it related to the poor of quality. So let's get into the more details about cost of quality. Cost of quality divided into two categories, two classification, four categories. Two classification is conformance and non-conformance. The conformance would be related to prevention and appraisal cost. Non-conformance basically based on internal and external failure cost. Prevention cost. These are the costs that is designed to attempt to keep failures from occurring. We don't want the problem from happening. So what we do, we provide more training, planning, more process improvement, and we do some quality reporting. We do some SPC training, ISO 9000 training, just to prevent failures from happening. So this is the cost designed to attempt and to keep failures from occurring. Appraisal costs, these are the costs associated with measuring, evaluating, or auditing a product or service or process, such as inspection, process audit, product audit, testing and test equipment, receiving inspection and testing, reviews, data collection, outside endorsement, and outside certification. Excuse me. All right, so appraisal, these are related to auditing, inspection, evaluation. Internal failure cost, these are internal failure costs. These are resulting from product or services. Excuse me. These are the costs that are related to product or services not conforming to internal customer requirements. These usually before we ship it to the customer. These are rework, re-audit, retest, defects, unscheduled lost time, excess inventory, and scrap. So these, any cost related to your product or services before we send it to the customer, as long as it's inside your factory, it's called internal failure cost. And the last one, which is the external failure cost, which is resulting from product or services not conforming to paying customer requirements, such as warranty, tech support, customer complaints, customer badwill, customer appeasement, lost businesses, liability, returns, and refunds. These are failures happened at the customer location, and that's why we consider it as external cost. So what I want to do as well, in order to explain this cost of quality, I want to take an example that I provided to my students. So we're going to open discussion 9. I give it as a discussion 9, and we have a series of activities and events that we need to find out the cost of quality for these events. Starting with the event 1. Event 1 here, we have this issue where the extrusion department makes 100 pounds of this specific product, C819 extrusion, that is defective. One flange is bent slightly inward. The defect is not detected at this point. The extrusion has cost 1.16 per pound. So looking into this event, we need to classify it first if it's internal, external, appraisal, or prevention. As you see, this is not shipped to the customer yet, so we could consider it as internal failure cost. The cost associated to that would be the $1.16 times 100 pounds, so that will give you $116. Moving to the next event, this event is also internal failure cost because it's not shipped to the customer. Additional cost is 19 cents per pound. So for 100 pounds, that would be $19. Moving into the next event, event 3, we have an operator set up a bench press to notch the ends. The setup requires half an hour at 11.75. So a half an hour would cost $5.88. Number 4, event number 4, an operator attempts to notch the extrusions. The bent flange prevents entry into the bunch die. The operator calls for a supervisor and waits for 15 minutes. The operator cost is 11.75. So now we have a 15 minutes. We have to divide it by 60 minutes because we have a 60 minutes an hour. That will give us how percentage in hours times 11.75. And that would be for event 4 would be $2.94. And this is also internal failure cost because it's not shipped to the customer. Now, event number 5, supervisor arrives. Operator and supervisor attempt to process the parts without success. Supervisor called the die maker. Both waited for arrival of the die maker. The total time is 20 minutes. Supervisor time cost 14.75. So that would be 20 divided by 60 minutes to find out the percentage out of hour times the 14.75 for the supervisor. The same thing, 20 divided by 60 times 11.75. That will give you internal failure cost of $8.83. Moving down to event 6 here, we have this event to be classified as internal. It's not sent to the customer yet. The company still figuring out the issue inside. So we have supervisor, operator, and the die maker discuss the problem without success. They decided to grind out the die, so the extrusion with the bent flange will fit into it. All the 3 work to remove the die and take it into the die shop. The total time required is 1 hour. And we have the die maker cost is 13.5. So we have 3 people worked on this, the supervisor, the operator, and the die maker for 1 hour, which is 13.5 plus 11.75 plus 14.75. That's again still internal failure costs. Now, number 7 is die maker grinds out the die, return to press, and set up the press. The time is 3.4. So 3.4 times the 13.5, that would cost 45.9, which is the internal failure cost. Now, event number 8, die maker, operator, and supervisor assemble to determine status. The operator seems the operation seems to work. Total time required 17 minutes. So 17 minutes from each one of these, from the three operators, we have 17 over 60 times 3.5, 17 divided by 60 times 14.75, plus 17 divided by 60 times 11.75, and that will give you an 11.3. And as you see, this is just auditing the process. This is just auditing. We audit the process. Therefore, this is considered as a appraisal cost. This is where you see the AC right there. That's mean it is an appraisal cost, just basically auditing and monitoring, make sure that the process is working. Number 8A, the scheduler spends 1.5 hours at 15.75 per hour to change the schedule and advise customer of change. This is prevention cost. We need to prevent any issue from happening. So we have to call the people and advise them of the change. And that would be 1.5 times 15.75, 23.63. For event 9, we have operator processes parts and carry them to the assembly department. That would be 9.75. And this is coming from 50 minutes times 11.75. That would be 9.75. This is internal failure cost. Moving to event 10, the same thing, 11 point. That's internal failure cost with 4.2 hours times 10.50 for the assembly. For the assembler time, that would cost 10.5 per hour, $10.50 per hour, and the assembler work for about 4.2 hours, so that would be 44.10. Event 11, the inspector noticed that some windows are difficult to operate. She confirmed with the assembler for 15 minutes and decide to summon the inspection supervisor. Inspector rate is 12.75. So the time for these two people for 15 minutes, assembler is 10.5, inspector 12.75. Both of them work for 15 minutes, and that would be $5.81. This is considered as an appraisal cost, the AC, because we're just monitoring and discussing and auditing the process. Event 12 is also appraisal cost, where they invited the inspector, supervisor arrives, and the supervisor come to see what's the problem. 4 persons meet on this problem for 13 minutes and decide to summon the engineer. All waited just basically here. They're just talking about it. They're inspecting. They're looking at the process. That's where it's considered as appraisal cost. So that would be 4 people involved. The one of them, all of them is 24 minutes. Divided by 60, one of them will be cost 17.25, which is the inspector supervisor, and we'll do the same thing for the other people, the 4 people, based on the time for each one. So for example, we have 14.75, we have 10.5 for the assembler, and so on. And that would be 22.10 for that event. Now moving into event 13. Event 13 is prevention. The engineer, inspector, inspection supervisor, assembler, and inspector confer for 25 minutes and determine a way to fix the problem. So they find a way to prevent the problem. So that what's called the prevention cost, and the cost for that would be just the time, 25 minutes out of 60 minutes and per hour. We multiply it by 26.75 for the engineer, and we multiply the rest by the cost for each one of them. And then for event 13, we have this is as appraisal cost, where document the event. The inspector documents events that took them 25 minutes, and that would be $5.31 for that event. And then event 14, that's internal failure cost, where the assembler works for 3.9 hours to repair the windows and then send them to shipping and eventually to the customer. So that would be 3.9 times 10.5 per hour. That would be $40.95. And then event 5 would be that would be external. And the reason for that, because let's read that, the customer defined there's a problem here. So it's defined by the customer. The problem is found by the customer, and that's why we call it as an external failure cost. After 2 weeks, customer calls, some of the windows work okay until they were installed. Then the vent flange caused additional problem. Customer request an engineer to fix the problem. Engineer spent 35 minutes. So 35 minutes divided by 60 times 26.75. That what happened is the cost would be 15.6 for the external failure cost. And now moving into event 16, that's event 16, they found there are more calls happening, and they decide to send more people to the field. And they have sent engineer, a quality assurance supervisor, plant manager, field manager. We have the time that they worked on and the wages for each one of them. So multiplied these times by the cost per hour to find out that event 16 would cost $248. And again, since this has happened at the customer side, this is considered as external failure cost. Now, event 17, field engineer spent 37 hours in travel to site, fixing the problem and reporting. In addition, engineer spent 1.6 hours on the problem. The sales manager spent 3.4 hours at 48 per hour. Travel cost is 984. So again, this is external because it happened on the customer side, not inside the company. So the cost for this would be starting with the 37 hours times 17. That's for the field engineer. And then also we consider the 984 for the travel cost. And we have 3.4 for the sales manager, who receive a $48 per hour, and then 1.6 for hours for the engineer, time $26.75. Total for that event 17 is 1,822 external. Week later, the same part is run again. It is found that the die can no longer run parts are not in specification because it has been relieved. Too much similar chain of events occur. So we have for event 8, we have the die makers, supervisor, operator, engineer all work for these times and these hours. So multiplying each time by the rate per hour, that will give us 169.08. And this is considered as an internal failure call, failure cost, because it happened inside the organization. And now the total cost of quality is 2,691 because of this problem. Now, what we did here also, in order to make our data more organized, we created a table. I created a table here for you. So we identified the external failure, the internal, the appraisal, and we selected the activity related to each one of these categories. And then once I'm done, I created a Pareto chart. So I went to insert and I created a Pareto chart to create a chart that will help us to demonstrate that looks like the external failure. It is the most expensive one, exceeded the $2,000. So therefore, they have to look into a way to reduce the external failure. So again, thank you very much. That's a very good example to demonstrate the cost of quality. I hope you understand this concept. Now, I want you to go ahead and try it, practice by your own, and let me know if you have any question. With that said, thank you so much, and I'll see you in another video.